I don't think there's ever an easy way to say no to your own mother. Especially when she's looking at you with that disappointed tilt of her head, the one that used to make me instantly apologize as a kid, even when I wasn't in the wrong. But this time was different. My name is Olivia Hart, and I thought I'd grown used to my mother's ways. The way she could turn any gathering into a subtle performance, where she somehow played both victim and hero. The way she kept score, not on paper, but in her mind, of every favor, every perceived slight, every debt she thought you owed her. I'd been away from my family for years, living my own life in a small coastal town, working long hours at my job, trying to build something that was mine. And then, out of nowhere, my great-aunt Margot passed away. I wasn't close to her, honestly. I barely knew her, but apparently, she had kept me in her will. When I got the letter from the lawyer, my hands actually trembled. It wasn't just a small gift or a token, it was a sizable inheritance. Enough that it could change my future. Enough that it could be the foundation for the business I'd been dreaming of starting. Enough that, for the first time in my adult life, I felt like I had options. I should have known I wouldn't get to enjoy that feeling for long. The moment my mom found out, she called me. No hello, no how have you been? Just, so, when are you transferring it? I actually thought I'd misheard her. Transferring, what? She laughed like I was being silly. The inheritance, Olivia. Sweetheart, you know it only makes sense for you to give it to me. I can take care of it, invest it. You're not in a position to handle that kind of money. It's better for the family. I stood there in my tiny kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the wall like it might explain what was happening. Mom, I'm not giving it to you. It was left to me. Aunt Margot wanted me to have it. Her voice cooled instantly. Olivia, don't be childish. I've sacrificed for you. Everything I've done has been for this family. You wouldn't even have been in that will if it weren't for my side of the family. It's only fair. We went back and forth for 10 minutes, her listing every sacrifice she'd ever made for me trying to explain that this money was my chance to finally stand on my own. She ended the call with a sharp, "You'll regret this." That was 2 weeks ago. I thought that would be the end of it, some icy phone calls, maybe a guilt-ridden text or two. But then I got the invitation. It was printed on cream-colored stationery, like a wedding invite, complete with cursive font. Family meeting, Sunday, 6 p.m., the Hart House. Attendance expected. Dinner will be served. My stomach dropped. My family didn't do family meetings. This wasn't going to be a friendly get-together, this was a summons. When Sunday came, I drove the hour and a half back to my hometown, pulling up to the familiar house where I'd grown up. The porch light was already on even though it was barely dusk, and through the front window, I could see shadows moving, people were already there. I stepped inside, and the smell of roast chicken hit me. My mom had gone all out. The dining room table was set with her best china, the silverware polished until it gleamed. My brother Daniel was leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, wearing that look he always got when he thought I was about to cause trouble. His wife, Megan, sat primly at the table, scrolling on her phone but glancing up with that faint smirk she always wore when family drama was brewing. And then there was my Uncle Rob, my mom's older brother, who I hadn't seen in years. He gave me a once-over that felt like I was being assessed for something, not sure if I passed. Mom emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her smile tight but showy. "Olivia. So glad you could make it." I wanted to say, I didn't have much of a choice, but I bit my tongue. We sat down to dinner, and for the first 15 minutes, it was small talk, or at least, their version of it. Daniel talked about his latest work project. Megan mentioned some expensive renovation they were doing on their house. Uncle Rob told a long-winded story about a fishing trip. It was all filler, and I could feel the tension underneath, like everyone was just waiting for the main event. Finally, Mom set down her wine glass and gave a little sigh, like this was all so hard for her. "Well, since we're all here, I think it's time we address the situation." Every head turned toward me. Mom folded her hands. "As you all know, dear Aunt Margot passed and left Olivia a rather generous sum. And while I'm so happy for her, I can't help but feel, and I think we all agree here, that this money should be used for the good of the family." I could feel my pulse quickening. "Mom, we've been through this. It was left to me, not to the family." She smiled, that patronizing smile I hated. "Of course it was, darling. But you're part of the family. And we all know money like that is best managed by someone with experience. I could pay off the mortgage, help Daniel with his business loan, and..." I cut in. "No. I'm not handing it over. I have plans for it. Aunt Margot left it to me for a reason." Daniel leaned forward, his voice firm. "Olivia, you're being selfish. We could all benefit from this. Why should you hoard it?" "Hoard it?" I laughed in disbelief. "It's not hoarding to use what was given to me for my own future. Why does everyone think they're entitled to it?" That's when Megan chimed in, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Maybe because your mom practically raised you on her own, and now you finally have a way to pay her back." "Just saying." My uncle stayed quiet, but his eyes never left me. It was like he was studying the whole scene, taking mental notes. The conversation spiraled from their accusations, guilt trips, subtle threats. My mom saying she couldn't believe I'd turned my back on my own blood. Daniel muttering under his breath about how I'd never been a team player. I sat there, my fork untouched, my appetite gone, realizing this wasn't just about money. This was about control. My whole life, they'd expected me to play my part, the agreeable daughter, the one who didn't rock the boat. But for once, I was saying no. And judging by the looks around that table, they weren't going to let it go easily. When dessert was served, homemade apple pie, my favorite, I didn't touch it. I just kept glancing at the clock, wishing I could get up and leave. But something told me that walking out in the middle of this meeting would only make things worse. As I sipped my coffee, my uncle finally spoke for the first time since the topic began. "Olivia," he said slowly, "are you sure you know what you're doing? Money like that, it can change people. And not always for the better." I met his gaze. "I'm sure. I know exactly what I'm doing." The table went quiet. I didn't know it then, but that silence was just the calm before the real storm. When I finally left that night, I felt like my entire body had been wrung out. My head was pounding from the arguments, my jaw sore from clenching my teeth for hours. The drive back home was quiet, the only sound being the hum of the tires on the road and the occasional ping of a notification on my phone, messages I didn't even bother to read. I didn't need to. I already knew what they'd say. Sure enough, when I finally got home and checked, there they were, texts from Daniel saying I was making a huge mistake, from Mom reminding me that families stick together, which in her language meant do as I say, and one from Megan that simply read, "Wow. Just, wow." I stared at that one for a long moment before putting my phone face down on the counter. For the rest of the week, I tried to bury myself in work. I'd been slowly putting together the pieces for a small coffee shop I wanted to open, something cozy, with bookshelves lining the walls, live music on weekends, the kind of place where people could feel at home. It wasn't just a dream, it was my way out of a life that always felt like it belonged to other people's expectations. The inheritance wasn't a golden ticket to instant success, but it was the push I needed to make it real. But every time I felt a flicker of excitement, I'd hear my mother's voice in my head, sharp, cold, certain, telling me I was selfish. It was exhausting. By Friday, I thought maybe the storm had passed. I'd had no new calls from Mom for 2 days. No surprise visits. I even allowed myself to believe that maybe they'd accepted my decision. I should have known better. It started when my doorbell rang early Saturday morning. Too early for anyone to be dropping by casually. I opened it to find my cousin Elise standing there, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing her military uniform. "Elise?" I blinked, still half asleep. "What are you doing here?" She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Aunt Marianne asked me to talk to you. Thought maybe you'd listen to me since we're close." I stepped aside to let her in, but my guard was already up. Elise and I were close once. She was like the big sister I never had when we were younger. But that was before she joined the army and started looking at everything in terms of chain of command and duty. I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly which side she'd be on in this battle. We sat at my kitchen table, and she got straight to the point. "Look, Liv, I get it. You want independence. You want to do your own thing. But family's family. And Mom, your mom, she's not trying to take from you. She's trying to protect you." I let out a dry laugh. "Protect me from what? Success? Making my own choices? From making mistakes you can't come back from," she said firmly. "Money changes things. People change. And if you're not careful, it can ruin relationships. I've seen it happen." I leaned back, crossing my arms. And what if giving it away ruins things for me? What if the relationship that gets ruined is the one I have with myself? For a moment, her expression softened, like she was actually hearing me. But then she shook her head. "I just think you should reconsider. Mom's been through a lot, Liv. So has Daniel. We could all use a break." There it was again, that we. As if my life, my choices, my opportunities, were automatically community property because we share some DNA. "Elise," I said quietly, "I love you. But this money isn't a break for us. It's a chance for me. And I'm not giving it away." She studied me for a long second, then stood. "Okay. I tried. But don't say I didn't warn you when things get ugly." And with that, she left. I sat there for a while after she was gone, staring at the half-drunk coffee in front of me, the steam long gone. My hands were trembling, though I wasn't sure if it was from anger, fear, or both. I didn't realize how quickly things were about to escalate. That evening, I got another text from Mom. Sunday dinner. Don't be late. No, please. No explanation. Just an order. I debated ignoring it. But some part of me, maybe the part still conditioned to obey, knew that skipping it would only give them more ammunition. When I arrived the next day, the atmosphere felt different from the last meeting. There was still tension, but this time there was an audience. Along with my immediate family, a few more distant relatives were there, people I hadn't seen in years. And sitting at the far end of the table, next to my Uncle Rob, was a man I didn't recognize. Tall, broad-shouldered, clean-cut. His posture screamed military. Mom beamed at me like this was all perfectly normal. Olivia, this is Sergeant Harris. He's a good friend of Elisa's and has been giving the family some advice about situations like this. I blinked. Situations like this? Harris gave me a polite nod. Just here to offer perspective. Sometimes people don't realize the bigger picture when it comes to responsibility. Responsibility. The word hit me like a slap. Was I now being treated like some unruly recruit who needed to be whipped into shape? I sat down slowly, feeling all eyes on me. Mom wasted no time launching into her speech again, framing my decision as reckless, short-sighted, even dangerous. Every so often, she'd glance at Harris, who would nod solemnly like a judge silently agreeing with her points. I didn't say much during that dinner. I just let them talk, let them try every angle, guilt, logic, emotional appeals. I realized something sitting there, though, none of them actually cared about my dreams. None of them had even asked what I planned to do with the money. It wasn't about helping me make the right decision, it was about making their decision the only option. By the end of the night, when I politely but firmly said no again, I saw something shift in my mother's face. It wasn't disappointment anymore. It was something colder. A decision being made. That's when I knew they weren't done with me yet. Not by a long shot. The next morning, I woke up to find my phone blowing up. At first, I thought it was just the usual group chat noise, but when I unlocked it, I realized it was worse than that. There were messages from extended family members I hadn't spoken to in years, cousins, aunts, even a couple of people I barely remembered meeting at weddings. And they all had something to say about my refusal to help. I don't know what's gotten into you, Olivia. Your mom has sacrificed everything for you, and this is how you repay her? We all pitch in for family. That's just what we do. It was like a coordinated campaign. Someone, I didn't have to guess who, had clearly been making phone calls, telling their version of the story. A version where I was selfish, greedy, and turning my back on the people who raised me. By noon, even my social media wasn't safe. Passive-aggressive posts from relatives popped up in my feed. Quotes about how money reveals true character, about remembering who was there when you had nothing. They didn't tag me, but they didn't have to. The timing was obvious. I deleted the apps from my phone, but the damage was already done. The weight in my chest was unbearable. I couldn't focus on anything, not work, not my business plans, not even the simple task of making lunch. My mind kept replaying the things they'd said, the way they'd looked at me last night like I was some stranger who had betrayed them. That's when I got the call from Aunt Janice. Janice had always been the cool aunt, the one who slipped me candy when my mom said no, who who took me to movies she knew my parents wouldn't approve of. She'd been distant for a few years, but I still had a soft spot for her. "Liv, honey," she said the moment I answered, her tone dripping with exaggerated concern, "I just heard about this whole mess. I have to say, I'm surprised at you." I sighed, pressing my fingers to my temples. "Janice, you don't know the whole story." "I know enough," she cut in. "Your poor mother is just trying to keep this family together, and here you are making it all about yourself." "It is about me," I said flatly. "It's my inheritance. My future." "Oh, don't be dramatic," she scoffed. "You're young. You'll make more money. Your mother's getting older, and she needs to know she can count on you. If she doesn't have that, what does she have?" There it was again, that subtle twist, framing my independence as cruelty. "I'm sorry, Janice," I said quietly. "I've made my decision." There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was icy. "Then don't expect the rest of us to stick our necks out for you when you need something. Because that day will come, Olivia. Trust me." She hung up before I could reply. I stood there staring at my phone, my hands trembling. I didn't even realize I was crying until I felt the tears hit my shirt. By the end of the week, things got worse. On Thursday, I stopped by the bank to finalize some paperwork related to the inheritance. But when I got to the counter, the teller's polite smile faltered. "I'm sorry, Ms. Hart," she said, glancing at her screen. "It seems there's been a hold placed on the transfer. You'll need to speak with our legal department." "A hold?" My stomach dropped. "On what grounds?" "I'm not sure," she said gently. "But it looks like a family dispute claim was filed. It's not uncommon in cases involving estates." I didn't need her to say more. My mother had taken this to the next level. That night, I called her. She didn't even try to hide it. "You left me no choice, Olivia. I have to protect the family's interests. It's not the family's money." I snapped. "It's mine." "It's ours," she said, her voice calm in that maddening way she had when she thought she was being reasonable. "Your father wanted it to benefit everyone. You're just too caught up in your little plans to see that." I was shaking so hard I had to sit down. "You can't just block it because you don't agree with me." "I can, and I have," she said simply. "And if you keep fighting this, you'll just make yourself look worse. Think about how it'll appear to the rest of the family when they see you dragging your own mother into court." There was no mistaking the threat. She was betting I'd back down to avoid the public fallout. But something inside me shifted in that moment. Maybe it was the months, years, of being told what I should do. Maybe it was the humiliation of watching them twist the narrative to make me the villain. Or maybe it was just the fact that they'd underestimated me one time too many. I took a deep breath. "Then I guess I'll see you in court." She laughed, actually laughed, like I just told a ridiculous joke. "Oh, Olivia. You really don't know what you're getting yourself into." We hung up, and I sat there in the dark, the silence almost deafening. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I pulled out every file, every document related to my inheritance, and started making copies. I called a lawyer the next morning. That's when things started to really unravel, because my family wasn't just fighting me in private anymore. They were about to make it public. I thought I was ready for whatever came next. I had my lawyer, I had my paperwork, and I had convinced myself that I was stronger than their opinions. But nothing could have prepared me for the sheer spectacle my family was about to turn this into. The first sign came when I walked into the cafe I'd been going to for years. The owner, Mrs. Carver, always greeted me with a smile. This time, she just nodded stiffly, as if I'd suddenly become a stranger. A couple at the next table went quiet the second I stepped inside. Their eyes followed me all the way to the counter. It wasn't paranoia. Later that day, a friend sent me a screenshot from the town's community Facebook group. There it was, a long, dramatic post from my cousin Melanie about how sad it is when some people value money over blood and how the real meaning of family is lost on the selfish. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. She mentioned inheritance and refusing to help your own mother. Everyone knew exactly who she was talking about. By that evening, it had blown up. The post had over 200 comments. Some people defended me, saying no one should be forced to give up their rightful inheritance. But most comments were judgmental. If it were my mom, I'd give her everything without a second thought. Money changes people. Sad to see it happen so close to home. The shame burned in my chest, even though I knew I had nothing to be ashamed of. 2 days later, I got the formal notice. My mother's attorney had filed a petition in probate court, challenging my sole ownership of the inheritance. It was official. When I arrived at my lawyer's office, she was already flipping through the documents. They're claiming that your father made verbal promises to use the inheritance for the benefit of the whole family. It's weak, but it's enough to cause delays. Delays? I repeated. Months, possibly longer, she said. They're hoping you'll give in rather than go through the hassle and expense. My hands curled into fists. Then they don't know me at all. We began preparing our case, gathering proof of my father's written will, banking records, statements from witnesses. But even as we worked, my mother escalated her campaign against me. One Saturday morning, I got a text from my best friend, Jenna. You might want to stay off Instagram for a while. I opened the app before I could stop myself. My mother had posted a smiling photo of herself surrounded by relatives, captioned, "Family is everything." Some people forget, but the rest of us remember. Again, no names. Again, obvious. I put my phone down and walked away before I could throw it across the room. The following week, the family meeting happened. I hadn't been invited, of course not, but word got back to me. They'd rented out the back room of a restaurant, apparently to discuss how to handle Olivia's behavior. The next morning, I was standing in line at the grocery store when a woman I vaguely recognized from church turned around and said, "I hope you work things out with your mother soon. It's not worth tearing a family apart over money." It was everywhere now. Not just family, not just close friends, strangers in my own town knew my business. I started avoiding public places. Grocery delivery. Working from home. Skipping events I'd normally go to. My world shrank to my apartment and my lawyer's office. But then, just when I thought I'd reached my breaking point, I found something. I was going through some old boxes of my dad's belongings, looking for anything that might help my case. In the bottom of a worn leather briefcase, I found a small digital recorder. I almost set it aside, thinking it was just some old work thing, but curiosity got the better of me. I plugged it in, pressed play, and froze. It was my dad's voice. And he was talking to my mother. "Margaret," he said, calm but firm, "we've talked about this. The inheritance goes to Olivia. She's the one who will know what to do with it. This is her chance to build a future. We're not touching it for anything else." My heart pounded. My mother's voice was faint but audible. "But what if the family needs it?" "They'll be fine," he replied. "This is for her. No one else." I replayed it 3 times, just to be sure I wasn't imagining it. My hands were shaking so badly I had to set the recorder down. This wasn't just helpful. This was devastating for their side. It wasn't hearsay. It was his voice, stating his intentions clearly. I called my lawyer immediately. When she heard the recording, she let out a low whistle. "This changes everything," she said. "They've been arguing that your father made verbal promises to share the inheritance. Well, we have a verbal statement that says the exact opposite." For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. The court date was set for the following month. I knew my mother would never see this coming. She was too confident, too certain that she had control of the narrative. And honestly, that thought kept me going. In the meantime, I played along. I didn't respond to her posts. I didn't defend myself on Facebook. I didn't even hint that I had anything up my sleeve. Let them think they were winning. Because soon, in a crowded courtroom, they were going to hear my father's voice. And everything they'd been saying about me was going to crumble. The weeks leading up to the court date felt both endless and like they were speeding by too fast. Every day I'd wake up with a knot in my stomach, wondering what they might try next. But at the same time, there was this quiet, steady confidence inside me now. I had my dad's voice. I had his words. I had the truth. Still, that didn't make the social tension disappear. My mother continued posting vague but cutting things online. My aunt started sending me long, guilt-heavy text messages about how life is too short for grudges and how one day you'll regret pushing family away. My cousin Melanie even stopped by my apartment uninvited one evening, armed with homemade cookies and a speech about forgiveness. When I didn't let her inside, she sighed dramatically and said, "It's sad, Olivia. Really sad. All you have to do is sign one piece of paper and this all goes away." I didn't bother answering. I just closed the door. My lawyer, Catherine, kept reminding me, "Don't engage. Anything you say to them could end up in court, twisted around. Let them think you're backing down. That's how this will hit them the hardest." So I stayed quiet. The night before the hearing, I barely slept. I kept pacing my apartment, replaying my father's voice over and over again. Not because I doubted what I'd heard, but because it gave me courage. Each time I heard him say, "This is for her. No one else," it felt like he was standing beside me, telling me to hold my ground. When morning came, I dressed simply, black slacks, cream blouse, hair pulled back, nothing flashy, nothing that could be spun into a negative. I drove to the courthouse with Catherine, my stomach churning. The building itself felt colder than I remembered. The echo of footsteps on the marble floors, the faint hum of fluorescent lights, the smell of old paper, everything about it seemed to press down on me. And then I saw them. My mother, flanked by two of my aunts, Melanie, and, of course, her lawyer. She looked put together, confident. Her eyes flicked over me with a cool indifference, as though I were just some distant acquaintance. We didn't speak. We didn't even nod at each other. Inside the courtroom, the judge, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes, took her seat and called the case. Catherine stood on one side with me, my mother's attorney on the other. The benches behind us were filled with family members and curious onlookers. I even spotted Mrs. Carver from the cafe. The opening statements were exactly what I expected. My mother's lawyer painted a picture of a misunderstanding, claiming my father had always intended for the inheritance to be shared among all of us, and that I was misinterpreting his wishes. He spoke with a kind of practiced charm, glancing at the judge every few sentences as though making a personal appeal. When it was Catherine's turn, she kept it short. Your Honor, this is not a matter of interpretation. We have clear, documented evidence, both in writing and in my client's father's own words, of his intent for this inheritance. We will present that today. The hearing moved on. They tried everything, dragging up old family moments, suggesting that I had always been different, implying that my father may have been pressured into making me the sole heir. At one point, Melanie testified that she'd overheard my father once say family comes first and tried to spin it into meaning financial sharing. I sat still through all of it. I didn't roll my eyes. I didn't shake my head. I just let them talk. Then it was our turn. Catherine introduced the will, the bank documents, and then, finally, she picked up the small recorder I'd brought in a padded evidence bag. Your Honor, she said, this is a recording made by the deceased, Mr. Richard Hart, during a private conversation with his wife, the petitioner. It was found in his personal belongings and has not been altered. It clearly states his wishes regarding the inheritance in question. The judge leaned forward slightly. Proceed. Catherine pressed play. And there it was. My father's voice filled the courtroom. Calm. Firm. Clear. Margaret, we've talked about this. The inheritance goes to Olivia. She's the one who will know what to do with it. This is her chance to build a future.